Hello, welcome back to another Godzilla Battle Line video. Today we're going to be doing our Season 17. Oh yeah, I always forget. Season 17 sounds right. Maybe it's 18. I think it's 17. At this point, it's a toss-up. But we're going to go with 17. And we're going to do our tier list. We have it all sorted out. There's only one buff last season, or for this season, which was Destroya, which we'll get into, but it wasn't really a big buff, and it definitely did not change the meta in any way. There's a little bit of slight changes, but we'll try to go through it pretty quick today. So, first up, Battra. Battra is OP. We all know Battra's OP. I'm going to try to gloss through it a little faster than usual. AoE buff, very strong. Fire Redan, I did move into the second spot over Mothra Leo. The heal is just really strong, and I think I'm leaning towards Fire Redan over Mothra Leo as far as strength goes, just because the heal is so game-changing, and there's nothing else in the game that can really do it like Fire Redan, so kind of have to give it to him. Mothra Leo, just a great offensive unit, just phenomenal, possibly the best offensive unit in the game. It's the best unit to have Psychic Chorus on, and it's just very strong, but can be countered with Kamakaris and things that want to eat the charge. Next is Psychic Chorus, just a very strong heal. It's gotten nerfed, but it is still just really strong. If you have very strong units, you put the heal on the strong units, and it lets them do a lot more damage. Usually works out for you. Units like Battra, Fire Dan, Mothra Leo. Tons of units love this heal, and it is very useful. Next is Ultraman. So Ultraman is just really solid. Has great range, combos with Dimension Tide nicely. And if you're good enough, Ultraman can be the best unit in the game because you could Dimension Tide things like Battra, Fire Dan, Mothra Leo, just so they're out of range to attack Ultraman while he is attacking them, and the Dimension Tide damage is coming through. And then he's going to have time to throw out a second attack, and it's just a lot of damage he gets out early. Helps him win a lot of trades. So Dimension Tide is a must. I see a lot of people use Ultraman without Dimension Tide. Please use both. It's such a great combo. And next is Dimension Tide. It's just a great combo unit. It combos with anything that's AoE. Even if you're not comboing it with AoE, you could use it for other things like taking out Kamakaris or just bunching things together and doing a lot of damage. Dimension Tide's great. Fits into a lot of decks, especially if you have AoE and piercing like I mentioned. Next is Biollante. Biollante is the best ground unit in the game. The water buff she gets is massive. Anytime she's deployed in water, she's doing insane amounts of damage. 3 cost. Like just upwards of 2,500 health most of the time, and it's just very well rounded, especially for the cost. And the evolution's super easy. Next is the A tier, which is going to start with Kamakaris. Kamakaris is super versatile, super good at all ranks, and just great at tanking. Burning Godzilla is, after the explosion radius buff, it really made this dude pretty good. After all the buffs he's gotten, it's pretty much like he's gotten a gigantic buff over time, and it definitely helps him. He's not an OP unit, but he is very strong. The explosion's great. I mean, it just hits leaders reliably. It hits a lot of units reliably. It helps him be a frontliner, and he's a good one. He's really slow, and yeah, Burning Godzilla is pretty good. Needs levels because he is kind of a tank, so he needs the HP to be able to frontline, but the explosion makes him very usable. Next is Anguirus. Anguirus is just the old reliable, just a great 4-cost tank. You could use him at all ranks because you get him super early on, so you can get him at a pretty decent level. And he has 4,400 HP at level 30, just very good statistically in the HP department. For a 4-cost, gotta love it. Godzilla Earth is just a menace, man. For 9 cost, it is hard to deploy, and I pretty much cracked the code with this dude. So Godzilla Earth cannot really be deployed in overtime. It's really hard to get him going. So you pretty much have a time window to stall out Earth till overtime, or you have to try to beat him. But he is one of the hardest units in the game to beat in the midfield because the Dimension Tide combo with him is so damn strong. He can burst so many things, and nothing in the game can really 1v1 him easily. G89 is also something that's not really run that often, so he's not really running into too many G89 problems. And even if he does, you could Dimension Tide G89 away and then walk Kamacuras in or walk something in. So he just has answers, and there's ways to make Godzilla Earth work. But he can't really be dropped in overtime, and he is super slow. So the time window with him is pretty crucial. Your pushes need to work. But he is very, very strong. Gigan 04 is next. So we dropped Gigan 04 a little bit. He is kind of frail, and when you're running into a lot of flying deck teams, he doesn't really do much for you. He's pretty good defensively at stopping ground units, and offensively, if they don't have ground units, he's just zipping in there on the leader, and he's not exactly that tanky, so he's really just doing, okay chip damage. But he's still solid, just dropping him a little bit. Just not like a godlike unit, just a solid support unit for 4 cost. Does good damage, has stuns, helps out a lot. Next is Hedorah, Hedorah's just got a place right now. Mecha King Hedorah is kind of just out of the meta pretty much, and Violante doesn't hit air, so that just leaves Hedorah in a really nice spot. She has really good stats, overall, especially at level 30. She's pretty well rounded, and the AoE splash is pretty huge, so she is hitting multiple things. Dimension Tide exists, which, combos with her and does a lot of damage. She's just pretty solid for the most part. Pretty solid unit. Oh yeah, and then the Poison Cloud just adds to her damage as well, so yeah, she's really good. Next is Space Godzilla. So Space Godzilla and Ultima are they just have like a similar usefulness to me. Not even what they do isn't similar, but like just the overall rating of their contribution is equal to me, if that makes sense. But Space Godzilla, pretty much a great defensive unit, a decent offensive unit. He's just a weird dude. Nothing really performs or does things like he does. The RNG just works really nice with crystals sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't, and you don't really know how it's going to play out. But Space Godzilla is kind of he's just a jester out there just pulling tricks, and you kind of don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what card is going to be dealt from Space Godzilla. But he is kind of a fun unit. A lot of people don't really think he's fun, think he's slow and kind of boring. I have fun with him, and I like using him, but he is pretty difficult overall. I would say him, Gigan 04, Ultraman, units like those are a little more difficult. Obviously, all you have to do is deploy them, but to deploy them correctly and get the most out of them, I would say it is more difficult with those 3. And next is Ultima. So Ultima, I think if your Ultima's up, I think he's better than Space Godzilla. But let's say you don't get your Ultima up, or Terrestrius is last in your hand. Space Godzilla is just going to feel way better most of the time in those scenarios. So it's kind of hard to evaluate, but when Ultima's up, he is very strong. Especially because he's been in the shop for a while. He's been in the game since almost launch, pretty much. And he's just got a lot of levels behind him. He's pretty damn tanky for a sniper, and he's always kind of hard to deal with. The only things that really stop Ultima are level 30 Anguirus's that stall him. But nothing else is really tanky and cheap enough to deal with it. Kamacuras aren't super reliable, so he is pretty strong. And it is necessary to take him out in his terrestrial stage, that's for sure. Next is Super X. Super X is possibly top of but it is super strong still. It still hits exactly like how it did. The attack speed nerf was barely anything, but Ultraman exists, which knocks him down a lot, and Dimension Tide, anything AoE piercing, pretty much mostly piercing units like Earth and Ultraman really messed up Super X. And Super X has kind of turned into a coin flippy unit. Like sometimes it can do like really nice work, and then other times it just gets Dimension Tide and killed a lot. So it's kind of hard to use. It's kind of hard to say it's reliable, but we all know how strong it's been in the past, and it's kind of hard to knock it down any lower. Next is Train Bomb. So we'll just talk Train Bomb and Energy Base, yin and yang. You're running one or the other. There's one side that absolutely hates Energy Base with a passion. They just absolutely hate the advantage it gives players and thinks it's stupid. Then there's another side that absolutely hates Train Bomb and just hates how much damage it deals and how cheap it is and how spammable it is and how there's no counterplay to it. And I think both are just super horrible things to like deal with. They're not even monsters, so it's not even like there's not even like a cool factor to it. You know, when a monster's kicking the shit out of you, you're at least like, at least I like that movie, I like that monster, it's cool. It's still kind of cool in a way. But when you're getting trained on or just energies just flowing through you, it's annoying. So, but I mean, you got to give these units props. They're around a lot, and some people just think Energy Base is trash, which is just not true. But yeah, most people in King of the Monsters know how annoying both these things are. Alright, next is B tier, starting out with Kiryu. We'll just talk Kiryu and Mog at the same time, pretty similar units. So I think these units are great offensively. They perform when you're using them like how you're supposed to at the end of a push and they go behind the leader. It is super strong. It is a super strong way to finish off games. The only problem is you're depending on the rest of your team to get to that point. So even though it's really strong in that moment for them, they're not doing much the rest of the match, which leads me to believe they're more of like a top of B tier because they don't contribute, nearly as much throughout the match. Like, let's say you have Battra. Battra's just contributing like the whole entire time. You're always deploying him. He's always killing stuff. He's always buffing stuff. Where Kiryu and Mog are waiting for their chance to strike. Which isn't like knocking them. They're not bad units, but they're very time-based units, and because of that, it's very situational when to deploy them. Next is Megaguirus. Megaguirus is just solid. She's just a solid 5-cost flyer who is not a 4-star and isn't as strong as some of these other 4-star 5-cost flyers. But I still think she does a solid job for the most part. She fights all of the 5-cost flyers well. She does decent damage. She has decent health. She's pretty decent at everything. And then she has the slow on top of it for defense, which most 5-cost flyers don't have defensive capabilities. Other than, well, Battra and Fire Dan do, I guess. But still, hers helps in ways that theirs don't, for sure. Like, there's times where Biolantes come in, you don't have a ground unit, flyers can't stop them, but Megaguirus can. And G89 and things like that, so I still think Megaguirus is solid, but nothing special like how she used to be. Next is G54. So G54 is good, but not great. I mean, his evolution or his transformation thing is what his upside is, but it's not anything too crazy. But it might be at the same time, because when you think about it, like 4-cost Kiryu, 5-cost Godzilla 04 now, which is probably going to be very strong and one of his strongest transformations, 3-cost Burning Godzilla, and 5-cost G89. Those are all really good. And you don't have to get Terrestrius if you run Terrestrius on your team. So those evolutions are pretty dang good. So I don't know, maybe G54 is better, maybe I should try him out more. But something about him, just like, he just, as a unit himself, he just doesn't really do that much. He's pretty much burning Godzilla without the explosion. And we saw burning Godzilla before when his explosion didn't hit. He wasn't very good. But G54 does have better stats, but it's not enough to really differentiate himself while not having the explosion. So all his upside kind of comes off the transformations, which in itself is random. In team building is really important, and when you're getting random units, it's hard to team build for 4 different possibilities, even if they are good. But yeah, I'll just leave G54 there for now. I don't think he's bad. You know me, I say this a lot. I always think the B tier is solid, especially like the top half of B. They're very solid units. So I still think G54 is good. A lot to be discovered with him still, and I'm sure in the next couple months I'll have a better opinion on him. Maybe he's due for a higher spot. King Caesar, still, I don't know how long he's going to be in B tier, but like still, I think this guy's great. He hits super hard. He's pretty consistent. He does have counters, but I think the pressure he provides in itself is worth a spot. He's very cheap for the amount of damage he could do, and if you have Ultima problems, dude, this guy is a money Terrestrius killer. Money. He kills Terrestrius so good. So, yeah, you can't knock King Caesar, but he does have a lot of counters. Next is Godzilla Final Wars, who isn't in the tier list yet. I'm going to put his picture over Terrestrius, so hopefully that's what you're seeing. But Godzilla Final Wars is kind of hard to evaluate. He's 7 costs, but I mean, he's good, but he's 7 costs. So, you know, like, I think Mecha King Ghidorah is good. I think Death Ghidorah are good units, but they're 7 cost. And it's kind of hard for these 7 cost units to be meta when 5 cost units are super good. And let's say, like, okay, but how is Godzilla Earth good if he's 9 cost? Because Godzilla Earth is on another planet statistically than these other units. Like 7 cost, so Godzilla Final Wars statistically is really not that far off from like a 5 cost flyer. Like if we're going to compare him to like Mothra Leo stats, it's probably not that far off in health, and definitely not that far off in damage, especially when you're including Mothra Leo's charge damage. So yeah, I don't know. And Final Wars Tail Swipe is kind of useless in most situations. I don't even think it's that useful for Kamacuras at all. It's really only good for Anguirus, and it's kind of the same thing with Mephiles. And it's not really that impactful to the character. What Godzilla Final Wars does do is very solid damage, kind of like Mephiles. He's pretty much a better DPS version than Mephiles is for 1 more cost. He's tanky, but he's extremely fast, which means it's kind of hard to have him sit in the back and stall a push with him because he's so damn fast. He just runs out there and just gets into the fight too quick and dies. He is only level 10 competing against stuff higher level than him, so maybe once he's, you know, in the 15 range and he's competing against stuff similar levels, we'll see how he does. But I don't think he's bad. He's definitely one of the better 4-stars we've gotten this year. Just not as meta-defining as I'd say Ultraman is. Not even really close. But high hopes for him, especially with maybe some small changes. Maybe a 6 cost drop. Maybe a little bit higher health to compensate for how fast he is. But I do like the character. I don't think he's a bad investment. If you invested your GMATs, I don't think it's a bad investment. I think with a couple small tweaks, he could be really, really good. Next is Mecha King Ghidorah, who I put in A tier. This is my biggest change. I told you guys last tier list though. I told you. If you don't believe me, go watch me talk about it right now. But I told you that I was going to be biased. My Mecha King Ghidorah was level 26. I was using it. I was having good success. But I've come to the realization Mecha King Ghidorah is not good. He's pretty damn overleveled for me. And if you remember me telling you, once you get 26 to 30, those level ups are massive. So he had a massive level up at 26, and he still just wasn't carrying like a 7 cost level 26 unit should. He should be dominating the field, but he's just not doing it. He doesn't attack fast enough, and he's not tanky enough to withstand these 5 cost flyers. They go in there and damage him too quickly. Even if he's hitting both at the same time, they'll kill him before he can really do that much damage. So, man, do you guys remember when they nerfed Mecha King Ghidorah's attack speed? Imagine a world where his attack speed is the same. This unit would be pretty dang good, and I don't even think it'd be S tier. We need to start writing more inquiries, guys. We need to complain more. We need to get these units fixed. They had Mecha King Ghidorah in a good spot, but the evolution was fooked. But they fixed the evolution and nerfed the unit, and they just fooked him again. Fooked him right in his 3-headed butt. So hopefully we can get this guy fixed. Next, Jet Jaguar Singular Point. Decent tank, but just not, he's just decent. He's just a decent tank. 4 cost. Maybe I'm low on him. I just don't see that many people use him. But when I do, he does do pretty decently. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe he'd just be higher B, but I don't really see him being A tier. He doesn't do enough damage and his range isn't that high. And he's kind of team dependent on whether, how good he's doing. So I'm just going to put him in B for now. G89, very strong unit, has problems, very counterable. Pretty much a double-edged sword, has a lot of upside, can get you some very easy surprise wins, and can also just get obliterated and stalled on and lose you the game super easily. So that's G89. Zeton is... I think the Zeton Earth combo is pretty damn good. I know it can be countered with Dimension Tide, but I still think it's strong, and I still think it will have a presence in the meta. As of right now, Zeton's going to be underleveled. His explosion doesn't scale with level though. So, I mean, he's not bad for being underleveled because of that. But he's definitely a unit that's going to need... He has very low attacks, so every level up he gets... So, okay, let's rephrase. He has very low attack, and he has super high HP. So every level up he gets, just because if he has high HP and low attack, is very important. So I think once he hits like 20, and he gets... that's a long time, but once he hits like 10 to 20 in those ranges, he starts getting those level ups, he's going to be really good, and I really think Zeton's going to be a pretty strong unit. But we'll see. Right now, he's just going to be bottom of B. You're going to see him rarely. He's pretty underleveled, but I do think he's definitely going to have a place in the meta for sure. Next is Mothra, a unit that needs buffs. It's been a while. Mothra's been chilling in bottom of B tier for a while now, and it's Mothra for crying out loud. Mothra is a fan favorite. The evolution time's too long. She does solid damage. She combos with Dimension Tide, but she doesn't have good HP, and the evolution time's just too long, so it's kind of hard for her to function. Very good with a Kong leader though, but people don't have Kong leaders, so yeah, it's tough. Next is Dusk Ghidorah, good unit, same problems as King Ghidorah, where it's 7 cost and is a lot more underleveled, so Dusk Ghidorah is kind of just falling into that same boat. It is better, and the piercing attack definitely helps him more, but because he's underleveled in comparison, it's almost like they almost even out to just having the same exact problems. Next is Doratz. Doratz is like a C tier pick, but when it's paired with Kamacuras, it's like a top of B, low A. So if you're ever going to use Doratz, you need to pair it with Kamacuras. If you don't, they're going to suck. That's all I can really say about that. Next is C tier. Manila has fallen. He doesn't do enough damage. He doesn't stun reliably, and he kind of just doesn't do anything most of the time. And he can be stalled on, so he's really not pulling his weight even for 2 cost, but he is decent enough to be like a top of C tier. He's never going to be like that horrible, but he's never really going to help you that much, so he's kind of just not worth it. G21 and Kong, not in the game. Not that great of 4 stars in general. Have some problems, but they can work and are decently strong, so you can make them work. But they're underleveled, so it's harder to make them work, and yeah, they each have their own problems. Mephiles is underleveled still, and his kick doesn't really do much for him. His health and attack need to be level 30. This is a unit that needs to be level 30 to see any play in King of the Monsters. That's just kind of how it is for him. Naranga is kind of just weak statistically. I think he needs a stat upgrade or an attack speed upgrade. He doesn't really stun that reliably, and he's not tanky enough to not be stunning reliably, so he kind of needs something. He needs a little push. Shin Godzilla just takes way too long to get on the field and relies on one strategy, which is, I think, is the only good strategy, is Gigan rushing him off of his Shinagawa evolution. And that's just a lot of setup for a not even that good a push. You know, Shin Godzilla is not that good. It's just that you can get him up for free almost from Shinagawa, so it just makes the push massive. But it's not really him as a character that's good. It's more of like how he can create a push. But yeah, Shin Godzilla definitely needs some buffs. Markalite Cannon is a sleeper. This thing might be rising in time. Even at level 20, this thing hits like a truck. And I think if you are going to mess around with some lower tier units, I think Markalite Cannon is definitely worth a try. Emba base is decent. It's just decent. It can help out. It could also do nothing. It can also get train bombed. So, same with Markalite Cannon. You know, it's just, they both have train bomb problems. Lacks consistency. Mechagodzilla is just super basic, does nothing for you, has no stun, is pretty much just a little bit worse version of Naranga at this point. Destroya just got buffed. No one's going to be using this thing because it's still underleveled. And the perfect form does have problems. We're all like ranting about the evolution. And I haven't tried this thing because now it's like level 3 for me and it's not even going to be worth trying. So I can't really give that good of an evaluation based off the buffs. But I do think perfect form has problems where he's very, very slow and his range isn't that high. But he is pretty tanky, and the Destroy a Larva passive is pretty strong and adds to his tankiness. So we'll see how he does. I think he has a lot of potential in the future, but right now he still needs some work. Next is Freezing Sunday. The slow does not do that much for you. They nerf the damage, so the damage is like minuscule, and that's pretty much it. Kamakura Swarm is just a very below average defensive option. I mean, it's okay, I guess. They do solid. There's some things you could do. I've seen people, you know, make them work against some weird teams I'm using, but I don't think they're anything to write home about, and you never really see them. Rodan 64 is just a bad unit in King of the Monsters. He does not really do anything. He doesn't really have a role. So the only thing you could hope for this unit is that nothing's targeting him and he could peck away at something in the butt, and that's about it. Next is the D tier, which is starting with Kid Ship. Kid Ship at 5 cost, still too expensive, needs a cost drop to 4. Teleport play is decent, but definitely not worth 5 cost. Embas are just pretty much useless. No one has used these things for as long as I can remember. They got a cost drop to from 4 to 3. Still does nothing. They should definitely be 2 cost because they're pretty damn useless. Jet Jaguar 73. So people think Jet Jaguar 73 isn't as bad as like D tier, but he is. He is. He's that bad. Yes, he can beat G89 and Anguirus, but I mean, in every other situation, he's literally just a walking meat shield, and he's not tanky enough to be good at it. So you have an evolution unit just to take out G89 or Anguirus, which there is other things in the game that could do that, like Kamacuras, and it's just never really worth it. There's never a situation where, I guess there is if you're playing against a G89 team that's really strong and you have the pocket Jet Jaguar, that's like his one use. But other than that, he's horrible. So he's never really worth running. Please buff Jet Jaguar. Save this dude. He doesn't deserve this. But next is Showa Geigen. So I stood up for Showa Geigen in the past couple tier lists, but under further review, he just sucks, man. I can't with this guy. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't do anything, and I'm trying my hardest to like want to see value in him, but he just sucks. He sucks. He's not even a meat shield because he's too fast to tank. His damage on the leader is just so unreliable, and you can't really put him higher for killing a 4-star leader because that's not meta. And man, he just sucks. You suck, you jackass. I don't know. If they're ever gonna rework a unit, hopefully it's Geigen, Showa Geigen, because he's terrible. Next is Airbase. Airbase isn't that bad. The damage is decent, but Train Bomb exists, and it is pretty not good, so it's just D tier. Stealth Bomber, a flying Showa Geigen with less damage. Trash. Giant Octopus, literally a useless unit. Literally useless. Haven't used it. It needs to be 30 to even see like some form of like rise for me, which it's not yet, and it's pretty damn expensive on top of that. The only viable use he has is if he can reliably sit in front of a unit to be pushed out in a midfield and die for you. That's about it, and it's probably not worth it, would be my guess, so I'm just going to put him in the bottom of D tier. Please buff this thing. It won the voting poll. I don't care if it was a troll pick. It's in the game, and it won the voting poll. Don't do this. Don't do it. Buff this thing, please. And lastly, Missile Strike. Missile Strike maybe isn't the worst thing in the game, but I mean, it's just not Train Bomb, and I see so many people in the low ranks still use Missile Strike. It blows my mind. And I think it's because they get it earlier than Train Bomb, and they could level it up more. And by the time they get Train Bomb, they're like, why would I invest gold in this when I already have Missile Strike at like 15? I don't know, man, but there's not one player in King of the Monsters that will look you in your freaking eyes and tell you that you should be using missiles over Train Bomb. Not one player. So maybe it's working for you right now, but eventually it's just going to be horrible, and it's going to be a waste of gold. So you level it up to the minimum that you're using it for, and then never use it again. Switch to Train Bomb. And that is it. That is my tier list. Hopefully you guys liked it. Hopefully it was a little quicker. Not too many changes. Let me know what you think of me dropping Mega King Ghidorah down to middle of B tier. Any other changes? It's going to be hard to keep Final Wars locked onto this position, but I'll do the best I can. I just swapped something. What did I do? Okay, before I ruin my tier list, I'll let you guys get out of here. Thank you guys for watching. I'm always down to discuss any information of the game below, anything you want to talk about being good or bad. I love those conversations, so feel free to comment. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good rest of your day. Take care. Peace out. TS Dragon is out of here. Hasta la vista, baby.